Hey guys, it's Steve from Featherlight, and today we're inside the isolation booth here at the studio, and we're setting up for a vocal session. And it's a great time to talk about the really powerful harmony creation tools inside of Cubase 12. So if you're working by yourself or you don't have a strong background in music theory, but you need to create believable and realistic background harmonies for your project, I'm going to show you two different methods to do that inside of Steinberg's Vari-Audio, and specifically Scale Assistant, that will help you build realistic and completely believable background harmonies for your project. Let's check it out. The first method of creating harmonies is going to be by using an existing vocal line already in our project. And this is probably the most straightforward and the easiest. We're going to start with a project here that got put off because of COVID for about 2 years, and we're just now kind of restarting this and getting all the session players and artists back on the project again. This is a Northwest artist, really talented. Her name is Pam Jean, with some just killer trumpet work from another Northwest icon, Mr. Greg Byers. I'll leave that info in the links below, and it sounds like this.
Now you can make it seem all the distance in between us is just a river taking its course.
All right, so we've got this little bridge part that comes in after the trumpet solo, and we want to add some harmony lines to that. So the first thing we're going to do to accomplish that is we're going to dupe the track itself. We're going to come down to lead 3, and we're going to duplicate the track. And then we're going to get rid of all the stuff we don't need. So all the stuff in the first verse, we don't need any of that. We really just want to add a harmony line to this section right here.
Is just a river taking its course.
So that's pretty straightforward, and we're going to use the existing line to do it with. Cubase has had some auto-generation harmony features for quite some time. So, for example, here, we could just take the track that we're working on here. We could select the part that we actually want, and we could use the Generate Harmony Voices feature that has been in this and several previous versions of Cubase so far, and we could tell it how many voices that we want. And there's a couple of other features like reducing vibrato strength and that kind of thing. But for this to work effectively, your project has to have a chord track inside of it. And since this was an open-ended jazz project that didn't begin with one, we don't have that to rely on. So for the time being, we're going to select our clip, and then we can simply hit OK, and it analyzes the note segments and creates harmonies this way. And so this is what we end up with.
Is just a river taking its
So as you can hear, the result is hit and miss at best. You can definitely open up the editor panel and you can move things around, but this requires you to have a little bit of theory knowledge to figure out where harmonies are supposed to go. And this is pretty typical of most harmony generator tools of that time period. It just makes an educated guess and stacks them all on top of each other. But the focus of this video is to create realistic harmonies, believable harmonies that sit in the mix in your song. So the first thing we're going to do is select all the additional takes in the track that we don't need, and we're going to delete those. And the next stage is maybe the most important part of this entire process, certainly as it relates to harmony creation, and that is to take the clip that we have here and bounce the clip. The reason why is that this disassociates this particular clip we're working on from the original clip that we duplicated from the track. If we don't do this step, the changes that we make to this particular clip, both in Vari-Audio and other things, are going to apply to that original clip. And we don't want that to happen. We want this to be a completely unique clip to work on. So we're going to take this particular section right here, and we're going to mute the other sections just for the time being because we don't need those. And we're going to double click on that. We're going to open it up. And then we see the Vari-Audio, the new Vari-Audio edit page. And if we click on that, it'll go ahead and analyze our note segments. And this is all happening here in the bottom zone. So if you don't see that bottom zone, come up here to your right-hand corner tab up here at the top. You see that 3-tab box, and the center one opens and closes that bottom zone. The light gray highlighted background in the window here shows our active clip, and this is the area that we're going to be working on in the song here. Now that we have two duplications of the lead vocal part, we want to make sure that the first lead vocal track is unmuted so that we can hear all the changes that we make inside the Vari-Audio edit window against the lead vocal part. We want to make some selections over here in our Edit Vari-Audio window. And our tab here gives us a variety of different things we can choose from. It's already analyzed the notes here. We can snug some of these pitches. They're a little far out back into place by using the correct pitch slider. We can straighten the curves of some of those. We can shift the formats, volume, and etc. And we can use our editor scale. And this is important because this is how we're going to build our harmony. And we want to do two things here. We want to make sure that these two boxes, show scale note guides, as well as snap to pitch editing, are selected. And what that's going to do is show us the legal notes in the key of the song we're working in on these light and dark gray horizontal bars here. Currently, they're on C major because that's what the Vari-Audio tab actually defaults to, but our song isn't in C major, it's actually in A. So we're going to click on A major, and we have a couple different scales that we can use here in the A major scale, and these get progressively more and more and more tension as we go down here. We have Aeolian and harmonic minor and melodic minor and all of these, but for the time being, we're going to leave it in major. And what that's going to do when we select all these notes and arrow up and down to move them in the scale, and as we move these up and down, you'll notice that the relationship of the clips to one another is changing. That's because each one of these clips is actually snapping to the scale of A major. At the moment, we just have the two duplicate parts, so they sound like a chorused vocal.
It's just a river taking its course.
And you can see once we corrected the pitch a little bit on those parts, it's moved those pitches around relative to the original track. And so that's what's responsible for that kind of swishy chorusing sound and that phasing sound. And that can actually work to our advantage going forward, because if we leave the parts exactly the same as the original, then it starts to sound pretty robotic and pretty sterile. So by physically moving and cleaning up some of these parts, we actually get a chance to make these a little more realistic sounding, as if a different singer, or at least a singer who sang a slightly different take, is singing the harmony itself. So we're going to straighten some of these out a little bit, and then we're going to select the entire thing, and we're going to bump it up a major third. And then let's play it back and hear what we have.
It's just a river taking its course.
We might want to make this last part a little more interesting.
Taking its course.
It might be nice to have this part over here changed just a little bit as a variation.
Taking its course.
And then even maybe break that up so that the it's
taking its course.
So here's our entire section with the additional harmony.
Now you can make it seem all the distance in between us is just a river taking its course.
In this next example, we're going to be creating multiple realistic harmonies for our modern rock project that we have in production here in the studio. We'll clean up and collapse some of these folders. Project sounds like this.
Many the miles and many the times I come running when you call, only to find what you say and do don't mean anything at all. Tell me right now what you want to say, 'cause every time I take a chance I always gotta pay. Don't wanna be shot down, pretty the lies that you think to say. So I'm shot down, buried a knife, and then you walk away. Don't wanna be shot down.
All right, so that's basically the chorus section here, and we want to add some harmonies to that chorus section. And we could just dupe the track like we did in the previous example and use that existing lead vocal for it. But the problem with that method is that that existing lead vocal will be identical, which means all the harmonies will be identical, and that adds kind of an artificial sound to it that we don't want. We want to have realistic sounding harmonies in this particular example. And usually in an example like this, at a project of this size, you're doing a lot more takes than simply one lead vocal take. So in this particular example, we have 3 completely comped lead vocal lanes to choose from here. And we're going to take advantage of that for this second method. So we're going to do the same thing we did in the first method. We're going to duplicate the tracks, but we're going to duplicate them 3 times. And we're not going to use the exact same vocal each time. We have basically 3 takes for each one of our duped tracks. All right, so for this example, we have our lead vocal, or our lead vox chorus take. That's this guy here. And this is our duped track. So this is going to be our first harmony. This is going to be harmony 1. And then our second duped track is going to be harmony 2. And then what we're going to do is we're going to leave this take, our first lead take for the chorus, we're going to leave that intact. And then we come down here to the second take that we just duplicated. We're going to choose that take instead, and then we're going to come down to harmony 2, and we're going to choose the first take instead. So now we have 3 takes, none of them the same. We have our lead vocal track up here. We have our second take of that same lead vocal track, and then we have the third take of that lead vocal track. These are what we're going to build our harmonies out of because they're not exactly the same. They're all the same phrasing and cadence, but they're not exactly the same space. There's a little bit of variance between all 3 of them. And if we play them side by side, you can hear that they're a little bit different variations of each one.
Tell me right now what you want to say.
Now, if there were really significant differences between the phrasing, we could use Cubase's vocal align process. We could come up here to audio, and then we could choose open audio alignment panel. And this is a really powerful tool when you're just doing quick things like this. So for example, if we have our lead vocal part up here, and we add that as our reference, and then we come down and choose, for example, this one, and then we add that as our target, and then we hit auto align, it simply auto aligns those 2 and gets the vocal phrasing a lot closer to each other.
Tell me right now what you want to say. 'Cause every time I take a chance, I always gotta pay.
From here, we can close the audio alignment panel and start working on our harmonies. And we'll just work on the first harmony. So we'll have these 2. If we double click on our harmony part here and we open up Vari-Audio, we'll analyze the note segments. Just like in our previous example, we want to choose the key of the song, even though it defaults to C. This particular song actually is in C. And we're going to be using the Blues 1 scale for our harmony choices here. We also want to make sure that the Show Scale Note Guides is checked and that the Snap to Pitch editing is checked. That way, as we saw before, when we raise our pitches up, then you'll notice that the relationship of the notes themselves are changing like in the previous example. And just like our previous example, when we select and raise all the notes up a third, they're all snapping to that blues scale in the key of C minor.
Tell me right now what you want to say. 'Cause every time I take a chance, I always gotta pay.
So from here, we have the makings of a pretty good first harmony line. We're probably going to change a note or 2 in here. Let's listen to this section.
I always gotta pay. Don't wanna be shot down.
All right, so that particular note there, we're going to change.
Down. I always gotta pay. Don't wanna be shot down. Pretty the lies that you think to say. So I'm shot down.
So we'll change that one here as well.
Down. Shot down. You bury the knife. And then you walk away. Don't wanna be shot down.
Same thing here.
Down. Shot down.
Now it's time to shift gears. We're going to mute the higher harmony part, and we're going to begin working on the lower harmony part. We've got our third lead vocal part selected here, and we've analyzed all of our note segments. The harmony choices here are interesting, and we have a lot to choose from because the notes are going to snap to the right space. So even if we're not entirely sure where they should go, we can try a few things until we find something that's going to work. So at first we have a chorus vocal.
Tell me right now what you...
But if we drop it down to the root position,
Tell me right now what you want to say. 'Cause every time I take a chance, I always gotta pay. Don't wanna be shot down.
we could even drop it down to, say, for example, the 5th position.
Tell me right now what you want to say.
For the time being, we're going to return this to its root position as we need more traditional harmonies for these parts by themselves. And let's unmute all the other parts and the lead vocal and hear what it sounds like as a group.
Tell me right now what you want to say. take a chance. I always gotta pay. Don't wanna be shot down.
And as you choose more interesting things down the road, you can choose harmony lines and scales that maybe you hadn't thought of originally. But by choosing some of these different harmony scales, Cubase is going to help you find some really interesting scales and happy accidents, even if you don't have any background in music theory to start with. So now we're going to go through and mute the sections that we don't actually need. So we have the first section here.
Tell me right now what you wanna say. 'Cause every time I take a chance, I always gotta pay.
We repeat the process for all the sections that we don't actually need. Once all the cuts are made for the sections, we set the levels in the mix to suit our tastes, and we set the panning positions of the vocals and any additional effects we might apply to those vocals. Then we take all our background vocal tracks and their associated insert effects, and we bust them all to their own group so we have complete control over the background vocals inside of our mix. We also have some additional effects on the background vocal bus. We have an EQ, a de-esser, as well as a compressor to help kind of rein that effect in and keep those background vocals a bit more controllable. And to finish things off, we've created a send from the background vocal bus to its own effects bus that includes both a stereo delay and a cloner to help widen the overall effect. The finished mix sounds like this.
Tell me right now what you wanna say. 'Cause every time I take a chance, I always gotta pay. Don't wanna be shot down. Pretty the lies that you think to say. So I'm shot down. You bury the knife and then you walk away. Don't wanna be shot down. Pretty the lies. It always ends this way. With me shot down. You bury the knife. Nothing left to say.
So as you can hear, Steinberg's harmony creation tools inside of Cubase 12 are pretty powerful even if you're just working by yourself and you don't have a strong background in music theory. You can come up with some pretty impressive results just on your own using one vocal track or a couple of different takes from that same vocal track. Hey, if you learned something or if this was helpful in any way, please hit the subscription and notification bells. It really does help keep the channel going. Stay safe, be creative out there. We'll catch you guys in the next video.